Hey, so I just finished watching the Time for School documentary this morning, and I was really affected by it a lot. I think I even felt the spirit at some point. So they talked about the education that some of these children receive in these different countries. The first thing that I really came to mind is how spoiled we are and how we take for granted what we have here in the United States. Um, Public education is pretty much a basic right in the U.S. We pretty much just expect it, we desire it. It's just the standard thing that children get to go to public elementary school or private, and they get to have good opportunities growing up. And something I didn't realize was how much these countries actually struggle that have all these problems in terms of education. One of the stats, it said 75 million people, or 75 million children I should say, don't have access to an education right now growing up, even a few grades, nothing at all. From the video, something that stuck out to me is that a lot of these children, they have such good pure desires and intent, and they have such good goals. They are very similar to the students here in the United States. They want to be professional athletes, or they want to be teachers, they want to be business owners, but they simply don't have the opportunities like we do here in the U.S. to have those. So first, in Afghanistan, we learned about Shugafur, this girl, and it was a pretty touching story to hear about her story, how she moved from Pakistan in a few different areas, and she came here in order to Afghanistan in order to get an education. One of the biggest problems that stuck out to me for them is that the Taliban is all the violence that takes place from the Taliban, and they're actually, that group is actually opposed to having women become educated. So there's actually been thousands of students who have actually been violently hurt by that group, and they've actually shut down many schools because of that. The thing that stuck out with me, particularly with this girl, is that she had to work on top of going to school. So she had to do all the chores, she had to cook and clean because that was a responsibility in her family. And so she had to kind of do both roles, and that was really hard for her. In Brazil, we learned about a boy named Jefferson. I like Jefferson a lot. He seemed like a really good guy. For him, with all the gang violence that takes place in Brazil, in the city that he lives in, the particular area of the city, it's going to be really hard for him to stay going to school. Adolescence, the documentary mentioned, is the time that most students begin to drop out, and that means pre-teen or early teenage years. These students start to drop out, which is really pretty sad to think about it. Some kids his age, just 13, 14, are already becoming involved with drugs and doing different types of crimes. Brazil has a good plan, though. Recently, they're allowing families that are poor to receive stipends from the government to attend elementary school. So they're actually developing this plan where everyone will be able to go. Eventually, that's the goal, and it's starting to work. The enrollment rates have gone way up, graduation rates have gone up, and I think it's a good idea that they have. Then in India, we learned about another girl as well, and something that stuck out with me with them is the parents actually kind of made fun of education, her parents in particular. They almost thought it was funny that women should have a right to education, and that kind of affected me in got pretty sad from that, to be honest. It was pretty tough to hear. Some of these girls, they get married at age 13, 14, 15, or around there, and so their opportunity for education is actually looked down upon, and they view it as a strange idea for them to receive an education. She had to work extremely hard as well. She would actually attend school at night. She'd work during the day and then attend school at night when the rest of her family was sleeping. Ultimately, she wasn't able to even continue on. She had to work during a drought season, and it affected her, and she had to drop out. So she wasn't successful in her education, which is pretty sad. So those first three, they were kind of the downsides of education in other places in the United States. But one of the positive things was the country of Japan. We learned about a boy named Ken who was very successful. Almost 100% enrollment rates in Japan for their education. It's one of the top educational programs in the world. Just recently, Japan actually backed off on their academic rigor. They actually decided it was a little bit too challenging, a little bit too intense. But now some of their test rates, their test scores are going down because of that. But I think it was good to see that there are other locations besides the United States, obviously, that are doing good things in terms of education. one of the programs they have in Japan is that it's state funded in every way, so every single student can go and receive an education at no cost. They have lots of after-school programs that kind of supplement what they learn during school, and their graduation rates are high, and they make it a big deal. So whenever someone graduates, they make it a huge celebration and things like that. They haven't received a lot of support from their parents, so a lot of these things that happen in Japan are not what's happening in Afghanistan, Brazil, or India. They kind of look down upon women and children receiving education as just kind of a supplementary thing. They think that working and providing for the family is number one, so they kind of stay in that status. Overall, I'm really supportive of the idea of providing a free education to all children. In the United States, it's very common. We don't think anything of it. But many other countries, especially in Afghanistan, you have to fight to even receive an education. It's pretty sad to think about. In terms of gospel-related things, we know that education is a very good thing. We know that Heavenly Father wants us to educate our minds and our spirits and to be able to improve where we're at in our lives. And I think that education should be a primary right that every person deserves. Doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. Doesn't matter if you want to go back to school. But for me, I never really understood how good I had it until watching this documentary. Going to BYU, Idaho, a church school that costs barely nothing. We're pretty spoiled, I think, overall. The things that we're learning, and we have such a great advantage because of the opportunities that we're provided. And I think these students in other countries, they would do just as well as us. They're in no way inferior to us. They're just as the same level of intelligence. They just haven't been given the opportunities. But as we seek to do service to these people by providing them opportunities, bringing the gospel to them, bringing education to them, they'll be able to achieve their full potential and be happy. But overall, Time for School is a good documentary. I enjoyed a lot of it, and I look forward to learning more about some of these issues in the class.